What's happening here? Starship hot staging ring removed, but why? What happened to this test tank? SpaceX hits another massive milestone and Varda Space is blocked by the FAA. My name is Felix, welcome to What About It, let's dive right in. Starship updates. With no approval from the FAA, the wait continues, while the engineers at Starbase show their flexibility working on other prototypes. Which prototype is close to being finished? What tests can we expect next? Work at the launch site never stops. You might have assumed that after the destack of Starship last week, the logical next step would be for Mechazilla to reassemble it after workers apply the final touches. However, events took an unforeseen turn when on September 21st the stack was taken apart even further. Our team was fortunate enough to capture the moment the hot staging ring was removed. For those who may be new to the channel, this ring was a late adjustment to the orbital stack. Shortly after the first flight, SpaceX must have come to the conclusion that achieving stage separation by tilting the entire rocket may not be as reliable as expected. This led to the decision to try out a hot staging separation method for the second orbital flight. But Felix, how does hot staging work? Excellent question. When it comes to Starship, that process is pretty straightforward. Shortly before separation, shut down all but 3 Super Heavy Raptor engines and reduce their thrust to 50%. Then, when separation is due, release the clamps and ignite Raptors on the ship. Physics will do the rest, pushing the upper stage away, hopefully without blowing up the booster. Sounds simple, right? In fact, this tried and true technique has been used for decades, mainly in Russian-manufactured rockets. Now that you know how it works, you may wonder why remove the ring. Is there a defect? Did something break? While the exact reason remains unclear, it looks to most likely be related to the booster itself. Post-ring removal, we saw SpaceX employees with welding equipment on top of the forward dome of Booster 9. Perhaps an issue with the clamps was identified after the ship sat on it for a few days. One possible explanation could be that a decision was made to attach the hot staging ring permanently to the booster, and that's what all the welding is about. We haven't seen any new rings at either the build or launch site, making a replacement or a possible static fire with the ring under, for example, Ship 26 seem unlikely, even though it might be a good idea as it's at the pads already. Meanwhile, meticulous and continuous efforts are underway to expand the orbital tank farm even further. Starships need loads of fuel. A few weeks ago, the teams at Starbase were working on heavily reinforced pedestals that will be used for the yet-to-be-delivered bullet tanks. These are intended to store essential commodities like liquid methane, oxygen and nitrogen crucial for fueling starships. Our latest aerial photos, together with Redline helicopter, reveal that a patch of concrete was excavated behind the new stands, suggesting 2 possible scenarios. Number 1. This might be the point where all the tanks will be connected to the rest of the existing orbital tank farm. Number 2. This may become a simple concrete wall intended to guard the tanks against potential future concrete tornadoes. Fingers crossed that this will never happen again. The latter seems more plausible given the proximity of the excavated concrete to the existing wall. The anticipation builds around when we'll witness the installation of these new tanks. Unfortunately, there is absolutely no indication of such vessels being en route to Starbase at this time. Will we see them before the second orbital launch? Place your bets in the comments down below. What we should see before the second flight is the static fire of Ship 26, redirecting our attention to the suborbital launch site. September 20th has shown encouraging indications that the test campaign might resume shortly, as the prototype was finally freed from the grip of the Squid, a tool utilized by SpaceX to lift ships. So what's next on the horizon? There are a few options. But before we delve deeper into today's mysteries of the cosmos, I'd like to take a moment to thank BetterHelp for their sponsorship of this channel. You know, space and science fascinates us, but life on Earth can be challenging too. I've always focused on the stars, but it took me a while to turn that attention inwards. I wasn't always a proponent of therapy, as it is not a great adventure. But neither is washing your hands and wiping your buttock. It is simply needed to live a healthy and content life. It's not about whether you have a clinical condition or just life's regular ups and downs. Therapy can arm you with tools to navigate life more effectively. Finding the right therapist can be like finding a needle in a cosmic haystack. BetterHelp has been a game changer for me. It connects you to their vast network of over 30,000 therapists based on your unique needs. Whether you're comfortable with messaging, calls, or video sessions, BetterHelp offers that flexibility. And if you ever feel the need to change therapists, easy to do at no additional cost. Plus daily group sessions for you to share your troubles with others in a similar situation. To support the channel and embark on your own journey, check the link below, betterhelp.com/whataboutit, for a special 10% off your first month. A big shout out to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode and helping us all navigate the challenges of life. Now back to the stars. Although this prototype concluded cryogenic testing over 6 months ago, a lot of work has been done on it since. This can prompt another round of cryogenic testing, possibly accompanied by a swift spin prime and finally a static fire, allowing all 6 Raptors to roar once again. Following the trails of other ship prototypes, we land at the build site, directly in front of the high bay where, as is evident, Ship 29... where'd Ship 29 go? Yup, your eyes don't deceive you. Ship 29 has vacated the build site. In the previous episode, I hinted that we should keep an eye on that new lifting jig at the payload processing facility, as its relocation was imminent. As expected, this new contraption was shifted near the high bay on September 20th. It was later connected to the building's crane, allowing it to lift the prototype onto a ship thrust simulator. Subsequently, the entire assembly was transported to the Massey's site, situated just 9 kilometers or 5.6 miles from the build site. Following this, the test stand will be connected with the ground support equipment, or GSE, and Ship 29 will be subject to cryogenic testing. As the name Thrust Simulator suggests, during that test, the pistons below exert pressure on this prototype's aft dome, emulating the thrust produced by 6 Raptor engines. Basically, a ship torture stand. Earlier, such a test was a pretty lengthy endeavor, since workers had to install the thrust rams on either suborbital pad A or B. After all the testing was done, they had to be removed so the ship could receive its engines. Presently, with the expansion of Massey's, this procedure is no longer a necessity, and all stress tests can occur here and much faster. The launch site is reserved for the real deal, a static fire. Streamlining is the key to efficiency. Reverting to the build site, our newest flyover unveils something really exciting. Do you spot anything thrilling in this picture? Type your answers in the comments. Ready? While we're waiting for your answer, do you know that you can book your own flight at Starbase? Go to redlineheli.com and book your own flight to experience the same views. And while you're at it, follow them on Twitter at redlineheli. Here it is. After its return from Massey's, Booster 10 was positioned at the newly set up engine installation stand. That means another prototype is nearly finished. This piece of hardware is set to substantially cut down the time required to install all 33 Raptor engines, thanks to the integrated work platform eliminating the need for additional equipment. Thanks to some wonderful renders from Ove and Chrome Kiwi, we can see how it actually works. Having a specialized engine stand also liberates the booster transport stand, accelerating the work on other prototypes. The second megabay is projected to also be equipped with an identical engine installation stand, currently under construction at the neighboring Sanchez site. Right now, it might appear somewhat rusty, but upon completion, it will unquestionably be covered with a fresh layer of white paint. Adjacent to it, a star-looking component is visible, possibly another base for the aforementioned work platform. The Sanchez site is also the residence of two mysterious black rings, but their purpose remains unknown. What are these for? Their heavy-duty appearance implies a more intensive application than the engine installation stands, evidenced by the ongoing extensive work involving scaffolding that's been surrounding them for weeks. Could they be a variant of booster test stands, with the possibility of one being installed at the suborbital test site? Only time can reveal the mysteries they hold. If this indeed is a test stand, it will definitely see extensive use given the accelerated expansion of the Star Factory. Can you believe that at some point it will yield up to 3 starships weekly? Observing its current status, the main construction of the second phase seems virtually complete. Adjacent to it, another segment of this structure is visible, also predominantly clad with roof and wall panels. This section features 2 entryways, sparking hope that our photographer might get an opportunity to peek inside once it's operational. The roof section has also been extended to the nose cone area, as these components, being the tallest segments of a full Starship, necessitate more vertical space. Upon completion of this section, we should see the dismantling of the sole remaining structure known as the Production Tent 3. Dude, that thing's going to be afraid. This tent is presently used for nose cone fabrication, which explains why it's yet to be taken down. There is simply no other free space to work on these sections. Next to that tent, workers leveled out the ground, suggesting that in the upcoming days, possibly weeks, we'll see the foundations of another factory's phase. Once the Star Factory is fully functional, activities at Starbase will escalate to levels never seen before. And on top of that, there is one more interesting thing here. Do you see that green patch of land right next to the Star Factory? We talked about this before, but now it really seems like SpaceX ended up building around it. Do you know why? In Germany, we'd call this a full-grown Mumpitz. That's a word describing a completely bonkers situation. This land is privately owned and the owner refuses to sell to SpaceX. They were forced to build around it. To wrap up this segment, let's revisit the Massey site, where a few intriguing developments have transpired recently. You might have already noticed some of them if you were watching this video carefully. Previously, there were speculations regarding the destiny of the S-26.1 test tank. The majority of people, including me, hoped for another flight termination system test. However, the reality proved to be more unexpected, as the prototype, while not detonated, nonetheless met its demise. So, what happened? In the afternoon hours of September 21st, this vessel was filled with liquid nitrogen. Less than 2 hours later, a massive pop occurred. The prototype gave in to the pressure. We've seen such tests before. Pushing test tanks to their breaking point yields crucial data, helping engineers in refining the design of Starship. It is called a test to failure. Curiously, this time the tank seemed to fail at one of the ring welds. Does this imply a test of a new welding method? This seems improbable, since this prototype was created back in 2022, likely to test out the conditions of Ship 24's flight. It underwent cryo-testing in May of this year. The unnamed E-Dome testing tank was transported to Massey's shortly after our flyover. This vessel will likely serve to see whether Starship can survive using a new, slimmer type of dome. If so, that would allow to fit even more cargo into Starship payload bays. What do you think? Will SpaceX test the E-Dome tank to failure, or maybe we will first see some normal cryogenic testing? Share your thoughts below, I am eager to hear them. Quick heads up, YouTube might have unsubscribed you unknowingly. Not kidding, they seem to do this quite often. Double check that subscribe button so that you don't miss our updates. While you're checking, hit the like button and consider joining our wise supporters for exclusive SpaceX updates. Everyone gets the same perks regardless of your contribution. You get access to daily Starbase photo galleries, now including aerial and ground photos of SpaceX's progress. The next flyover will likely happen on the day you watch this episode. Check our Patreon page, the link is in the description. Huge thanks to our existing supporters, you rock! Alright, diving right back into the news flurry, it seems like the wizards at SpaceX have pulled yet another rabbit out of their technological hat. This time around, they've outdone themselves again, setting quite a remarkable record. It's been a while since we touched upon Starlink missions. The missions dubbed Group 6-14, 7-2 and 6-16 took off on September 9th, 12th and 16th respectively. Together they contributed an additional 64 V2 mini satellites to the Starlink constellation. These are used as temporary solutions until SpaceX nails the orbital flights with Starship, after which the transition to full-scale V2 sets will occur. Once in orbit, the V2 Starlinks will allow for enhanced internet speeds and expanded user access, Starlink on steroids. Every mission concluded successfully, with boosters hitting the bullseye on remote drone ships. What stood out in this series is the third mission, as shortly after it, SpaceX granted us a visual treat from the second stage. This view shows not just the reflection of the second stage on the satellites, but on closer inspection reveals the two separation mechanisms, also called tension rods, recoiling. The high reflectivity of these satellites might raise your eyebrow, but don't worry, it is intentional and advantageous. You might be familiar with the Starlink train phenomenon. Post-launch, it takes a few weeks for the satellites to disperse and elevate their orbit. During this period, they can be seen as a series of bright dots crossing the night sky. Quite beautiful to look at if you are not an astronomer. These are especially visible in long exposure shots, where they appear as long white lines. Lines that you don't want to have. Since satellites don't emit light, their visibility at night is caused by sunlight scattering, like a mirror reflecting the light down to us. The sun, our celestial light bulb, bathes everything in its rays, some of which collide with the satellites and bounce back to our view on Earth. Understanding this involves considering three forms of light scattering: specular reflection, diffusion, and absorption. The first type, specular reflection, takes place when a ray is reflected off a surface at a singular angle. The second, diffusion, occurs when light strikes the surface at one angle but is scattered in multiple different directions. Lastly, absorption happens when the material blocks the light, preventing it from bouncing back. In a perfect world, we would want all the light to either get completely absorbed or fully reflected without any diffusion. Then, if a Starlink satellite was correctly aligned, the reflection from the sun would never cross the Earth, rendering it almost invisible. However, in reality, no material is flawless. Everything exhibits properties of absorption, specular reflection, and diffusion to varying degrees. Thus, beginning with the V2 satellites, SpaceX employs three strategies to minimize sunlight reflection back to Earth as much as possible. The first strategy involves the application of a highly reflective dielectric mirror film on the satellite's underside to deflect light away from Earth. It can be seen in action in the aforementioned footage. That is smart. If all the light is reflected in the same direction away from Earth, you can't see it. The second countermeasure adjusts the solar array's angle to ensure sunlight is redirected into space rather than Earth. Lastly, the rest of the satellite is cloaked in a low reflective black paint that absorbs the majority of the incoming light. While these modifications don't render the satellites entirely invisible, SpaceX collaborates with the scientific community to ensure Starlink interferes with astronomical observations as little as possible. Now that you're an expert on light pollution, let's return to the launches. Specifically, we are focusing on two missions, Group 6-17 and 6-18. These launches introduced an additional 44 V2 mini sats to the constellation, elevating the total number of satellites in orbit to 4,807. However, the real highlight of these missions is the groundbreaking records they established. The first mission saw the deployment of booster B1058 for an unprecedented 17th time, achieving a flawless landing on the A Short Fall of Gravitas drone ship. Let that sink in. 17 successful reuses of a single booster. No one would have believed this to be possible a decade ago. And the best part, they did it again just 3 days later. On September 23rd, booster B1060 also experienced its 17th reuse, marking another successful landing, this time on the Just Read the Instructions drone ship. This mission also signifies the 200th overall reuse of a booster, a feat on its own. Currently, Falcon 9 has the green light for 20 reuses, but Elon Musk claims that there's nothing preventing them from reusing it up to 100 times. What do you think? Where's the limit? We live in a truly incredible period of space exploration. That exploration, however, has to follow some rules so that it doesn't pose any danger to people here on Earth. One company that recently learned about that the hard way is California-based Varda Space, another player in the FAA waiting game. While they aren't launching colossal rockets, they are struggling to bring down their capsule back from orbit. That's a first. Varda, specializing in space manufacturing, sent off their inaugural orbital laboratory aboard SpaceX's Transporter 8 mission in June. This satellite, utilizing Rocket Lab's Photon bus, holds the promise of transforming space pharmacy, medicine from outer space. The mission, dubbed Winnebago 1 or W1 for short, aimed to grow crystals of ritonavir, a medicine used in HIV therapy. But why would you want to produce anything in space? In orbit, concerns like gravitational stress that influence crystal formation and heat convection are basically non-existent. This enables the creation of purer, easier to absorb medicine, a crucial factor in treating certain conditions. So, was the experiment successful? It appears so, as Varda confirmed crystal formation. All that remains is to bring back the capsule with samples down to Earth. Sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Here's the issue. The satellite was launched with the expectation of acquiring a re-entry license later in the process. That hope was recently crushed by the FAA and US Air Force as they've denied the re-entry request. According to the FAA, the company failed to comply with regulatory standards. The Air Force, on the other hand, has unspecified safety concerns regarding the Utah Test and Training Range, the planned landing site for this mission. This delay likely stems from Varda's ambition to conduct landings on a monthly basis by 2026. The concept of commercial re-entry licenses is relatively new, requiring thorough assessment by these agencies to make sure these missions won't cause significant airspace impact. Two competing interests. Varda Space asked the FAA to reconsider their decision, but the results are still pending. The silver lining is that the capsule is able to stay in orbit for up to a year, offering hope that with continued cooperation with the FAA, Varda could eventually retrieve their samples. It is strange to see the space industry evolve so fast that they seem to leave regulatory institutions behind. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more awesome content. This is what fuels the algorithm and helps us immensely. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A link is in the description. And if you want to train your space IQ even further, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. So, underside to...